Yes, good morning everyone. Okay, so straight away we'll start with important news. 28th January 2022, the Hindu newspaper. Okay, so first of all, we'll take overview of important articles. Let's see the first page of the newspaper. The Central Asia meet forms Afghan group. Okay, so first India Central Asia Summit was hosted by Indian Prime Minister online platform, and yes, there were discussion and deliberation on various topics of concern of those countries. Okay, Central Asian republics and India. So the issues like Afghanistan and let's say whatever the connectivity issues that these countries are facing for increasing the trade relations, economic relations, so they were discussed. We will try to find out the outcome here of this so-called, let's say, Delhi Declaration. Again, okay, so IR section, GS2 paper, it is important. Now, you can see on right side, early signs of a flat case load, says the government. Now, this is good development. Here onwards, we believe that the states are taking some measures to let's say relieve the restrictions on the economic activities, and also the students who were not allowed in the classroom, maybe in the coming week or after that they will be allowed. Okay, so this is good news for the aspirants in Delhi also. Yes. Yes, weekend curfew also lifted in Delhi, and yes, important other cities also now the cases are declining. Also, you should understand now the cases are moving to tier 2, tier 3 cities. There the cases are increasing. Okay, so this is the trend that we have observed in the first and second wave also. Okay, now moving on to page number 6, editorial page directly. So you can see that on editorial page there is important article on bottom side, India's economy and the challenge of informality. Okay, so informal economy. So Indian economy is facing this challenge since long time. We will understand the causes here, the steps which are taken by the government up in recent past so as to formalize the economy, and why there is need of formalizing the economy, whether the steps were adequate, what further steps are required. GS3 paper very relevant to our examination, mains examination. On left hand side again there is one editorial talking about open the schools. So need of reopening the schools. Okay, so yes, in the past last week we had discussed the similar article. Again we will revise that, why there is need of reopening the schools. Okay, so social justice and we can say COVID-19 GS2 paper, it is important. Now other articles you can see that they are of political nature. Again we can say on page number 8, 9, 10, everything is political of nature, except we will discuss one article on page number 10 which talks about 250 Tiwa Gurkha extremists lay down arms. Okay, so from internal security perspective, GS3 paper, which are these extremist groups in northeastern states. Okay, so this is let's say from Tiwa community and the Gorkhas of Assam. Okay, so we should be aware about these extremist groups, insurgent groups in Northeast India, what are their issues. Okay, now they have surrendered here, this is also good development, and yes, they are going to be assimilated in the mainstream society after let's say the government addressing their issues. So we will find out this Tiwa community or Tiwa tribe. We had discussed about this in December month. There was one news talking about this hill Tiwas, if you remember. Okay, so Karbi Anglong district of Assam and this community which is living the cooperative life, community life there. So this Tiva community is important for our examination from art and culture perspective, ethnic diversity, tribes of Northeast India. Okay. Now on text and context page, there is one important article talking about the budgeting process. Talking about the budgeting process. Now this is very relevant to our examination. This year mains examination, there was question on the basics, what is revenue, difference between capital budget and revenue budget. Okay, and what are the components of capital budget and revenue budget. Now this can be directly answered from this article. Okay, so that's why I am saying it is very much relevant. We know that on 1st February there will be union budget presented on the floor of parliament by the finance minister. So that's why such articles will appear, and this is the time of the year that you should prepare about the budgeting section of our syllabus from mains perspective as well as prelims perspective. Okay, so let's discuss these articles in detail. First article. Yes, understanding the budget formulation. This is the name of the article on text and context page. Okay, let me tell you that those who are having the printed copy of the Hindu newspaper, they are not giving this text and context page. Only it is available on e-paper. Okay, so you should refer to that article by typing simply the name, and you can visit the website. There you will find the article. Also for that purpose, now the paid version is required. So we prefer, so if you are very much comfortable in the online reading and all these things, so you do the e-subscription rather than having the printed newspaper. Okay. Yes. Now components of budget and its implication for economy. Now GS3 paper, budgeting aspect is relevant to our syllabus topic in our examination. Every year there is question on the budgeting part. Also those who are having public administration optional subject, it is also part of syllabus, paper 2 of public administration. Now what are the major components of budget? Okay, so first you should understand about, let's say, capital budget, revenue budget. Okay, this was the question. Simply, what is the difference between two? You can see the question, distinguish between capital budget and revenue budget. Explain the components of these budgets. We'll directly answer this question here in this part. So capital budget, the capital and revenue, simply we should understand capital is something which relates to long-term assets creation. Asset creation. It results into long-term asset creation. Okay, so this is, we can say that capital, or it helps in reducing the liabilities. Okay, so long-term liabilities. So it is capital budget. Now any kind of budget has two parts. Okay, expenditure and receipts. Expenditure and receipts. So it has two parts, capital receipts or capital expenditure, and second is capital receipts. Okay. Now what is capital expenditure? It can be economic or social. It can be economic or social. Now economic expenditure, economic capital expenditure largely revolves around creating the long-term assets such as road construction, railways, pipelines, airports. So basically infrastructure creation, largely it revolves around this capital expenditure we are focusing. Second thing is social expenditure. Now social sector expenditure, simply we can understand. Now what can be social sector expenditure? The expenditure for public health infrastructure. It can be education purpose also. Okay, so that is social sector expenditure, and that will be, we can say again, the capital expenditure. Then capital receipts. Okay, so capital receipts can be of we can say the commercial borrowings now this kind of commercial borrowings of the government can be from the market or from the RBI. Okay, so both are simply we can say that capital receipts. It is a kind of liability of the government, a debt of the government. Okay, so simply public debt, that is we can say that capital receipts, and they have to be returned. There will be some kind of interest rate paid by the government on it. Okay, so external commercial borrowings or simply commercial borrowings of the government are there, so we will call them as capital receipts. Okay, now what is revenue budget? Now revenue here simply we can say that it is related to we can say raising of resources of the government. Okay, raising of the resources of the government, simply we can say it is revenue budget. Now it is also having revenue expenditure and revenue receipts. Now this revenue receipts can be further divided as tax and non-tax receipts. Okay, so taxation we can understand that there can be corporation tax or income tax or GST, everything comes under the taxation. They are revenue receipts. Okay, but there can be non-tax receipts also, like simply we can say that the dividends on government shares in PSU. If we are talking about PSU, whatever the PSU is generating profit, that is part of revenue of the government. Okay, that is also revenue receipt, but it is non-tax. There is no tax on the, let's say, any public or any transaction here. Rather, the government is earning profit. Okay, so also we should understand that there are date creating and non-date creating receipts. The other type of revenue receipts we can say that date creating and non-date creating receipts. Now date creating means we can say that here after generating those resources there is some kind of liability. So simply we can say that they are loans here that the government is having, and whatever the interest payment is to be done there. Okay, so that interest payment is we can say that resulting into some kind of date. Okay, and non-date creating means whatever the government has given the loans, like central government gives loans to the state government sometimes. So it in return it earns some kind of profit. Okay, so or we can say interest. So that is non-date creating. Also this investment in the PSUs, that is non-date creating receipts. Okay, so we can also add that now revenue expenditure. Revenue expenditure means it does not result into any kind of creation of long-term assets or capital assets. So we can say that the administrative expenditure, day-to-day life, day-to-day administrative expenditure or salaries and allowances of public servants, civil servants. Okay, so they are revenue expenditure. Okay, and in this manner we should understand which kind of components are included in this budgeting system. I guess now you have understood the different components of the budget. Okay, again it will be revision for you. There will be separate session on the budget and economic survey foundation batch, and yes, whenever the budget is presented in the Hindu analysis also we will revise the different components of budget there also. Okay, now what are the implications of the budget on the economy? Simply we should understand the implications of both these components, the capital aspect and revenue aspect. Okay, now at present, if we are relating to present status of Indian economy, so simply we can understand we do not have the more aggregate demand at present in the economy to boost the economic activity. Okay, so during the pandemic we have seen the dip in the economic activities and there was threat of economic recession, and for that purpose we need to increase the aggregate demand, and here comes the role of budget here. Okay, or the fiscal policies. When the government is having the capital expenditure, then it will create aggregate demand in the economy. It will generate the aggregate demand and then the economic cycle will continue. Okay, so this is how the economic cycle can be further fastened with the help of fiscal policies. Okay, so we had seen 4 drivers of economic growth and one of them was public infrastructure investment or public investment. Okay, so this is the capital expenditure. This is also important. Then along with that, this revenue expenditure is also important. If you remember what happened after the first wave, the government started increasing the allowances of public servant or civil servant so that the private consumption of these civil servants will increase. Okay, and because of that there will be increase or boost to the demand in the economy. So this is how the fiscal policies help in boosting the economy. Okay, so the implications you should understand, but also you should understand the concerns related to revenue generation. Okay, so there are limitations on the revenue generation by the government. Okay, so there is problem of tax compliance and the tax revenue is not being generated, or tax to GDP ratio is one of the lowest in the world. Okay, so for that purpose fiscal deficit is increasing day by day. Okay, so fiscal deficit, and when there is higher fiscal deficit, there is always pressure on the government to limit the capital expenditure and revenue expenditure. There is always pressure on the government to limit that expenditure. Okay, so beyond certain, let's say, levels of fiscal deficit, this is how we should understand the fiscal rules and how they affect the policy. Okay, so certain fiscal rules we should understand that tax to GDP ratio or fiscal deficit to GDP ratio. So we need to maintain the balance in these important indicators. Okay, if what will happen if suppose there is higher fiscal deficit to GDP ratio, there will be less amount of public expenditure money available with the government. Okay, and if the government borrows more and more, there will be more public debt. Again the government will face we can say the problem here, and therefore there is need to increase the taxation. But what happens is when there are less economic activities and the people are having loss of livelihood, more taxation is becoming problem. Okay, and here comes the role of expanding the tax base and taxing rich more. Okay, so there is need of, let's say, taxing more. There can be surcharge on those billionaires or those having certain higher level of profits or income levels. Okay, so this is how the increase in taxation during such pandemic times or emergency times is required, and this is balancing in the fiscal policy. Budgeting is all about that, and the main role here is to create the demand in the economy. Fiscal policy. Okay, so we have FRBM Act in the country so as to ensure that fiscal deficit remains in the target levels or within the tolerant limits. But yes, during the exception times, FRBM Act itself provides for the exceptions, and the government has done such kind of exception, especially after 2008 financial crisis. Okay, so we should understand that there is enough flexibility with the government, but the fiscal prudence, the appropriate word is fiscal prudence. That is, the government needs to reduce the wasteful expenditure, focus more and more on capital expenditure, creating the assets, especially in social sector. At present, the health and education facing the major problem. So fiscal prudence should be there, and the allocation of resources should be in an efficient manner. Along with that, whatever the revenue expenditure of the government, especially when we talk about the subsidies, there should be rationalization of subsidies, and that wasteful expenditure on subsidies should reduce. Okay, so in this manner, the fiscal prudence aspect is also important part of budgeting. Okay, so it is relevant to GS3 paper economy part. Any question related to this? Again, economy related article, India's economy and the challenge of informality. Okay, so GS3 paper, challenge of informal economy or informalization of the economy. Informalization or informal economy means what? Simply we should understand that at present around 90% of the workers work under informal economy in the country. Okay, and only around 10%, 9% work under the formal economy. Now, what is informal economy? Informal economy means here the laws, rules related to labor, taxation, social security do not apply to these organizations, or let's say industries, or the individuals who are working in that organizations. Okay, that is called as informalization. Largely it is characterized by, we can say, semi-skilled or no skilled workforce. Around 70% of them are workers are self-employed. Major sector we can say that here in the informal sector is construction industry, and it is also characterized by low productivity. Low productivity, as the workers are not having skills or they are semi-skilled, so low productivity. These are the manifestations or characteristics of informal economy. So simply, why there is need of formalization of economy? Yes, simply we should understand that informal economy, though it is contributing largely to the GDP, but it has huge potential if the workforce is skilled workforce. At present it is not skilled, and therefore the low productivity. Along with that, the workforce does not enjoy any social security benefit there, and therefore they are always vulnerable. They are always vulnerable to economic shocks or any kind of, let's say, unpredictable event in their life. Okay, so lack of social security and low productivity, this creates the problem in informalization or informal economy, and therefore there is need of formalization of the economy. Also, to realize the demographic dividend in the country, we need to formalize the economy, we need to skill our workforce. Now, in that direction, what are the steps in recent past taken by the government? Formalization, if we are talking since 2016, if major events like demonetization. Second, we can talk about GST reform, 2017. Third important, the emphasis on digital financial transactions. Then we can say that registration of all informal workers, Social Security Code 2020. These are the measures, main important measures in recent past, we can say. Directly write this in your answer. Okay, these are the measures taken by the government for formalization of the economy. Along with that, many skill development schemes, like you can mention about Skill India Mission is there, NSDC is working on skilling the people, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana is there, many, let's say, small schemes also like Nai Roshni, Ustad scheme in different, let's say, Naxal hit areas or in Jammu Kashmir militancy hit areas, different schemes are being implemented. Okay, so for skilling purpose. But yes, major let's say interventions are these interventions. Now let's understand the analysis of these measures. First of all, evaluating them. Yes, the traditional approach.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, how demonetization helps in formalizing this economy?
See, demonetization helps in formalization economy because whatever the earlier notes, they were scrapped, and the new, let's say, monetary currency that comes into the picture. So that results into elimination of black money. Okay, and black money is actually result of informal economy. Informal economy works on cash transactions. You know how workers are paid in the unorganized sector? They are paid as a daily wages. Okay, simply in the cash transactions. All these transactions happens in a cash manner, and simply because of that, what happens is this informal economy is contributing to black money generation also, or simply we can say that non-tax transactions that is also affecting revenue of the government. But the other aspect or the objective of that demonetization was promoting digital economy. आपको पता होगा उसी टाइम पे गवर्नमेंट ने वो भीम ऐप लॉन्च करना और प्रमोट करना, ये सारे वॉलेट्स एंड पेटीएम वॉलेट्स एंड तभी स्टार्ट हुआ था, right? And once they are digitized, the financial transactions, they are digitized, that means they are now under formal banking sector. Okay, that is also part of, we can say, formalization of economy. When the financial transactions happens under the banking sector, that is part of formal economy.
Yes.
Okay. Now traditional approach, simply we should understand in traditional approach related to formalization of economy is that boosting ease of doing business, reducing compliance hurdles for, we can say, social security, labor laws. So simplification of laws, rules, along with that ease of doing business. So overall economic activity needs to be promoted. This was the traditional approach. Along with that, whatever the workers that they are working in the informal economy, their registration, identifying them, and then focus on skilling them or providing some kind of benefits to these workers. This was the traditional approach visible in the government, we can say, interventions. But the problem with this is that it is not resulting into formalization. Rather, it is benefiting to capital class or capitalist class or those corporates Okay, so ease of doing business, simply it is increasing the capital investment in the formal sector only. Rather than investment in the informal sector, the investment is happening in the formal sector only. So the MSME sector or those working self-employed people, their condition is not improving. Their condition is not improving, and you can give the example or simply the manifestation of reverse migration that we observed during the first wave of pandemic. So there we understood that major chunk working in the informal economy in the country, they do not receive any kind of protection here. Okay, so that's why we should understand the way forward. The economy will get formalized when informal enterprises become more productive through greater capital investment and increased education and skills are imparted to workers. So there are various interventions that can be there, and present government is focusing on that. Let's say Skill India or mission is there, or we can say stand up and startup, stand up India, startup India. How we are focusing on this? We are promoting entrepreneurship, also we are promoting skill development, and third thing is that ease of access to the credit. Ease of access to the credit. So this is going to increase the productivity through capital investment. Up till now, these organizations working in the informal economy, they did not have access to the formal credit. Okay, they were very much dependent on the local lenders, or they were raising some kind of money through informal means. होता है ना कि मतलब कोई एक किसी से भी इनफॉर्मली पैसे लोन पे लेना, और वो फॉर्मल इकोनॉमी में नहीं आता है, राइट? सो दे आर वेरी मच charging the higher interest rates and all these things happens. Okay, so access to the concessional credit, one of the component, and then skilling and educating the workers. Promoting entrepreneurship. So this is going to formalize the economy, and along with that the traditional measures, of course, government needs to support the vulnerable sections. Implementation of social security code in letter and spirit is very important, and the past or the experience of implementation of labor laws in India is very poor. Okay, although the government has compiled all the labor laws into the labor code, and one of them is social security code. ठीक है, 4 कोड तैयार किए हैं उन्होंने सारे लेबर लॉज को कंपाइल करके, राइट? सो वन ऑफ देम इज सोशल सिक्योरिटी कोड. So whatever the laws related to social security, they compiled in one single code, and that is being implemented. But yes, we have to wait and watch how it is going to be implemented, whether the change that has been brought, it is going to make any significant impact. Okay.
Some of the rural government banks, they are giving the monthly finance to the daily wages. This program will be give the low rate of interest to the vulnerable section of people to encourage the entrepreneurship, as well as it will support to the economy of our society.
Yes, simply you should understand like self-help groups. जैसे syllabus का part ही है आपका, right? It is part of our syllabus, GS2 paper. Self-help groups are nothing but simply the individual people, when they were working, they are part of informal economy. But when they together came, let's say as a part of group, and they started accessing the finance through the formal sector from the banks, and banks gave the concessional loans through government schemes. Okay, so like for example NRLM, National Rural Livelihood Mission, it talks about self-help groups. Okay, so now that they start becoming the more productive, and then they have some kind of capital investment in their business. It expands the community, or those members, they skill themselves. This is how the formalization of economy is happening.
Sir, apart from self-help groups, those are working in bank employees, field officers, they are giving the directly money to the monthly basis, sir. And after
Yes.
every month they will collect by personally by going to the people, sir.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, so access to the formal credit is a very important component of formalization of economy.
Because of that people will don't know the filling of forms and everything, that one also it's not able to access the resource from the bank also. That's why
Yes.
the field officers is directly connecting to the field people, sir.
Yes, yes. One of the objective of RRB is that one only. Okay. So providing the formal credit to the farmers, landless, rural labor. Okay. Yes. So simply the question: explain the need of formalization of Indian economy. Do you think the steps taken by the government in this direction are effective? Justify your opinion. Okay. So such kind of question can be answered from this discussion. Next, again, open the schools. Yes, already we have discussed this topic. Again, we'll revise this. Yes, data from the state shows that more than 95% of their beds are unoccupied. Okay, so when this Omicron or the third pandemic wave started, the states prepared in the full strength and various ICU beds and the capacity was increased in the unforeseen events that may have or that could have happened. So that's why. But yes, what we witnessed in the past 1 month or 2 months during this wave of the pandemic, we understood that Omicron is not that much, let's say, severe, resulting into severe disease. Hospitalization is very less, and this is the, we can say, this is how the states are now focusing on reducing restrictions. Like now the Delhi Disaster Management Authority, or simply we can say that Delhi government has taken the decision to reduce the restrictions on the economic activities. The weekend curfew has been, let's say, raised. Also, we should understand that focus here is on now promoting economic activity, as the livelihood is very important component. Next, evidence is unequivocal that the odds of requiring hospitalization are low in the doubly vaccinated people. Okay, so vaccines have worked to some extent. Okay, vaccines have worked to some extent. It has helped in creating some kind of we can say defense mechanism against the severe COVID-19 disease. But still schools continue to shut in the most of the places, and the administrators are reluctant to open them because most of the children are unvaccinated. Okay, so why schools needs to be reopened? First thing is that various studies and sero surveys have suggested that children, although they are vulnerable for infection, or they could carry the infection to the home, and the parents or the grandparents, other members may get infected. But such kind of, let's say, infection, or children are already 70% of them are having antibodies against this virus. Various sero surveys at national level have suggested that. So that means they have been already infected. And there is some kind of immunization, immune response have been created. First thing. Second thing, we should understand low severity among children. So children's immune response is more compared to, we can say, youth or aged people also. Then we should understand the impact of school closure. The impact of school closure, we have learned about this: loss of education, problem related to malnutrition. Okay, midday meal scheme, Anganwadis, they have been closed because of this. So whatever the midday meal they were receiving, nutritious meal, now they are not. So whatever the nutritional outcomes, there will be problem. Also it is resulting into some of the social evils, child labor, child marriage, also vulnerable for child trafficking. So this is also concern, and these are the results of, let's say, schools being the closed. These are the results of school, let's say, interruption in the education, and because of that all these problems are happening. So simply we should understand that the schools needs to be reopened for these reasons. There is scientific evidence that children are less vulnerable for severe disease, and because of closure of schools these problems are happening. Okay, so this loss of education will further increase the inequality which is existing in the society. Okay, because rich people, those who are well off, their children are receiving the education, there is no problem for them. But the poor people who were dependent on the physical environment in the classroom, so they are having the loss. This is going to increase the inequality in the future generations. Okay, yes. So what needs to be done? Obviously the school needs to be reopened. There is need to more flexibility at district level. District administration should have more autonomy on decisions for reopening of the school. There can be, let's say, measures in place like the school staff, teachers, they should be doubly vaccinated. Okay, there can be the vaccination camps for the children above 15 years of age, which is allowed in the country now. So simply at school itself the vaccination camps can be there. Okay, so in this manner there should be focus on continuation of the education, as it is creating major problem for the children. इसमें आप वो mental health वाला issue भी लिख सकते हैं. Right? Children are facing the mental health issues by remaining at home, more exposure to the digital devices and all these things. Okay, so yes. Next, Central Asia meet forms Afghan group. Okay, so our Prime Minister has hosted first India Central Asia summit, and these Central Asian countries Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. So important topics or issues discussed. First, connectivity. As we know that these are landlocked countries, they need to have some kind of connectivity with the ocean surface, or simply we can say that for the international trade, and India is helping for that. India wants to increase the trade with Central Asian countries as they are important aspect of energy security for the country. Okay, so connectivity issue, simply we can say that one of the major, they also announced the joint working group on Chabahar port project. So Chabahar port in Iran, why we developed that? To increase the economic relations with Iran, Afghanistan and these Central Asian countries. Okay, also we wanted to have connectivity because Pakistan was acting as an obstruction for land connectivity to these countries. Also, other issue discussed is the situation in Afghanistan. Okay, so concerns related to Afghanistan, the human rights violation, protection of rights of women, children, minorities, combating terrorism and drug trafficking, ensuring that there is inclusive government formation in the Afghanistan. All these aspects they are concerns of India as well as these Central Asian countries. There will be a, let's say, working group, joint working group of the officials on this issue also. Also, these countries together agreed on, let's say, establishing Central Asia Center in New Delhi. Central Asia Center in New Delhi. Okay, so then again the leaders discussed the possibilities of increasing Indian trade with this region beyond currently low levels of about $2 billion. This is to be mentioned in the answer. We are expecting question India Central Asia relations. In last 1 year, many developments have happened. Like recent past, there was NSA level talk, there was External Affairs Minister level talk, and now the leadership level talk. summit level talks. Okay, so this is very important, becoming important aspect of India's foreign policy. Now, the options over sea provided by Iranian ports, including Chabahar port terminal managed by India, and the international north-south transport corridor. This is also very important component of connectivity with the Central Asia. North-south corridor through Bandar Abbas, again one of the important port of Iran, that is promoted by Russia and Iran. Okay, so in this manner we should understand the issues discussed in the summit, outcome of the summit as a Delhi declaration, and this is to be written in your answer directly. Okay, yes, ठीक है. Next, 250 Tibas, Gurkha extremists lay down arms, internal security, insurgency in northeast. Okay, so traditional aspect everyone is reading. In classroom also we have taught about every traditional aspect: Naga insurgency, Manipur insurgency, Assam insurgency. Then we also talked about we can say the success in Mizoram and Tripura, how insurgency is contained in that region, and the contemporary and recent issues like Bodoland. Okay, but small insurgent groups we generally do not read from the traditional books जो हमारे रिसोर्सेस होते हैं पढ़ने के लिए. ठीक है, तो ये करंट अफेयर्स से आपने कवर करना चाहिए. लाइक द 250 मेंबर्स ऑफ 2 एक्सट्रीमिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस इन आसाम laid down their arms. Now, which are these? Tiwa Liberation Army and United Gorkha People's Organization. Okay, this TLA was formed in 2014 to cater the aspiration of Tiwa community. Okay, and it was active in Morigaon, Nagaon and West Karbi Anglong districts of Central Assam. And the second one, Gorkha, it was formed in 2007, mostly active in Bodoland territorial region and Biswanath district of Assam. Okay, now on this occasion, Chief Minister of Assam has also distributed financial grant of 1.5 lakh each to 462 members of 5 other extremist groups who had surrendered earlier. Okay, so this is how state government is also helping them to rehabilitate into the mainstream society after they lay down their arms. Okay, so we can simply say that surrender cum rehabilitation policy, उसमें ये financial package दिया जाता है so that they earn the honest livelihood, or we can say that peaceful life they live in the society. तो ये एक फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से दिया जाता है. ओके, सो उसमें क्या है? डिस्बैंडेड ग्रुप्स लाइक रभा नेशनल लिबरेशन फ्रंट, आदिवासी ड्रैगन फाइटर्स, नेशनल संथाल लिबरेशन आर्मी, नेशनल लिबरेशन फ्रंट ऑफ बंगालीज एंड यूनाइटेड पीपल्स रिवोल्यूशनरी फ्रंट. ऑल ऑफ दीज वेर एक्टिव इन आसाम. Traditionally, we all know about ULFA only, or we can say Bodoland Tigers. We can say Bodoland Liberation Army is their Tiger Liberation Army. Okay, but these are small working towards the issues of their own communities. Okay, now about this Tiwa community, there was one news in December month. Let me show that to you. Okay, we have covered this on 19th December 2021. Okay, there was photographs of this Tiwa community harvest they were doing. Okay, so Hill Tiwas tribe of Assam. Okay, so we talked about how they enjoy their community life. Okay, so the various terms were there, how they harvest this rice and this particular storage. Okay, the Maipur, which is tightly secured by the bamboo strips. Simply you should know about this news, and Tiwas, twice it appeared in the Hindu newspaper. So that means there can be chance in the prelims examination about this community, or in general communities, tribes of Assam. Okay, so Karbi Anglong, remember the place, foothills of Karbi Anglong district of Assam, or hills of Assam. Okay, Now, on this basis, this question, what should be answer to this question? Yes?
Sir, last one is because of they are not mentioned anywhere now.
So you are using elimination method.
Elimination method, sir, because of first and second is the highest population in that one, sir.
Simply,
Last one.
yes. So this is very important, let's say, skill that you need to have in the prelims examination. Available knowledge should be used to eliminate the options. So we talked about Tiwa community just now. We also know specifically Bodoland territorial dispute or Bodoland community concerns in Assam, always in news. Also just now we talked about Rabha. ठीक है, तो वो रभा वाला जो एक एक्सट्रीमिस्ट ग्रुप है. Okay, so obviously there is Rabha tribe in Assam. Okay, and they are also having some concerns. So all these three are communities, tribal communities of Assam. This Angami is actually Naga tribe, one of the Naga tribe of Nagaland and Manipur. Major population lives in Nagaland and Manipur. So major tribes of Northeast India, you should be aware where they live, major population, in which state. Okay, so state wise you can prepare. State wise you can prepare for Arunachal Pradesh like Abhor, Mishmi and Dafla. All these, the names of the hills are given because of these tribes living there. Okay, or Garo, Khasi, Jaintia, Meghalaya के जो है, so you can remember them. ठीक है, Naga tribes, which are these Naga, or Kukis in Manipur. ठीक है, Kuki Chins in Manipur. So remember their names, and they are important for our prelims examination. Okay, fine. Any question? Okay, so as I had earlier told you, those who are online students or except the foundation batch, they will be joining the prelims course directly. Okay, so from next Monday at Lukmaan IAS, there will be test series come PT perspective program, wherein the daily 20 MCQs you are going to solve there. Along with that, in the same day evening, there will be interaction with the faculty. Their doubts, your doubts will be solved there itself. A 100-day plan in advance itself will be given to you so that you adhere to that and you start your preparation for your prelims examination. Also, it should be understand that you are going to have daily basis interaction with the mentor. Now, you can understand that it is not easily available for the students to interact with the mentor, where they are lacking the strategy or the right strategy they need to have to crack this examination. Okay, so along with solving the MCQs, you should be also having the interaction with mentor, and this is made available through this test series program at Lukmaan IAS. So for further information, you can contact to Lukmaan IAS and you can join that program. Fine? Okay, let's stop then.
Thank you, sir.